In this lesson, let's learn about the most critical rule of fetch method to understand how it handles fail or break when a file is missing. This example is trying to simulate how to load a missing file and demonstrate how to catch the 404 error. If you look at the console, you should see a 404 output as the error. So let's go ahead and see how you can handle fail or break with fetch method in JavaScript. So here is my boilerplate code, and we're going to be following these three steps. Number one, we're going to make a function to simulate an API call and then print the data to the console and use our async and await to handle the response from the printed JSON data. So let's go on. So the first thing I'm going to do is to make a function, and I'll call it fake fetch, since I'm just using it to simulate data. And note that fetch method only breaks if the internet connection drops completely or the server doesn't exist. So that is usually when fetch method breaks. So let's see an example of an instance like that. So I'll go ahead and make a function and call it fake fetch, since I'm just using it to simulate data. And this fake fetch that I have is going to take a URL, which is going to be what or where the fetch method is going to read from. So inside this fetch method, I'm going to return a new promise. Return new promise with a resolve. And this time around, I'm not going to be adding a reject, which is the other input for a promise. And that is because of the fact that I want to just use this to simulate that this is supposed to be a success response or output. So if what is not expected to be contained in the code, or that is supposed to be contained as data passed in, is now not available, that is when I should not get the error. And so the reason why I'm doing away with reject in this case. So I also need this set timeout method. You can see that it's a built-in method. I'm not the one who's just constructing it. It's an arrow function, and then inside it, so I will set my resolve. And inside this resolve, I basically want, so I will set my resolve this way, and let me say okay, which is supposed to be true, is false. And what else? I want to add a status. So if the response.okay is false, then return 404. What else do I want to add? Okay, so I want to add the JSON itself. Promise.resolve. And I want to pass in an empty object to it. So from here, I can also set a 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 second, for the data to be processed and then passed on to the async and await pattern. So now that I have this, then I can use the async and await pattern to handle it. So let me call the function load data, or if I want the name to match, I can call it fetch data. As you can see that my editor is already suggesting it for me. So this is my async part, and inside this async part, I'm basically just going to do few things. So the first thing is I want to make a variable and call it response, and pass in await and my first function fake fetch. And this time around, I'm just going to pass a string and call it missing JSON. Now you can see that I'm not passing a URL where this should read from. So instead, I'm just passing a generic text in order to demonstrate how fetch method can fail, or how fetch method can break if there's a missing file, there's internet connection drop, or the server we are trying to reach doesn't exist. So now that I have this, I can now go ahead and use a conditional statement to test if my response is actually what I claim it to be. So in this case, I'm not going to do response dot okay and continue with my conditional statement. Instead, I want to say if the condition is not okay, so I will use a exclamation mark before the condition that I want to test, because I want to demonstrate how fetch methods handles error. And this is the reason I'm deliberately adding this not negation to my data inside the conditional bracket. So I can then go ahead and say console.log http error happen. And now show me the response status. That is, if there's an error in this conditional, then show me the error and the response status corresponding to that error. Then I'll add return. That is, stop the execution once you get this. I don't want this to continue. So this return simply means stop this execution. And so this will stop the conditional process once it reaches the return statement here. So now that I have that, then I can come here and make another variable that will now undo the data. So I can use await to undo the JSON and console.log the data, whatever it is that we have. So I'll go ahead and check the console if there's anything inside it yet. Of course, we don't have anything yet, and that's because the function has not been called. So I'll go ahead and call the function fetch data. And in my console, you should see something now. HTTP error happened 404, and that is because I'm negating the correct or the expected output in order to demonstrate how fetch method breaks in case of a missing file. If I remove this now, let's see what happens. So now you can see that I am getting an object without any element, and that is because my JSON is an empty object. But because I want to demonstrate a fail state, that is the purpose of this exclamation mark. And now after 1 second, HTTP error happened 404, and that is the 1 second that we set here in our set timeout method. So this is how you can this is how fetch method behaves when there is a missing file. So it will just return an error to let you know that the file or the server that you are trying to reach is not available. So if we don't put this negation that you see inside this conditional part, so it will just try, the JavaScript will just leave this part and jump straight down to here. Like I demonstrated, you can see that when it jump down to here, it just display an empty object that does not exist. And then in a real application, that will create a nasty crash. So by checking the .ok and using return to stop the execution of the conditional statement, when it reaches the statement, we safely park the car before hitting the wall.